So let's go over the factual information and detail questions in the reading section. Now, as I mentioned in another video, I have this as question type 1, but it's not necessarily the first question. As I mentioned before, I have here question type 1, question type 2. These are not in the order that they appear on the exam. This is mostly just in the order of most frequently, but it could be a little bit different. But the factual information and detail questions are the most common questions on the exam. First of all, you definitely need to have good skills of both skimming and scanning. Skimming the passage to get an idea of what's in it, and scanning the passage to get to look for specific information. So these two skills are very similar, but skimming, of course, you're just reading quickly over the entire passage just to get a general idea. Scanning is when you're searching for specific information. You also need to have at least an intermediate level of English skills and vocabulary. This word here on the site is always linked because we have the TOEFL Excellence Vocabulary Database that you can link to. Anytime you see the word vocabulary, you can press that and it will take you to the database so you can learn new vocabulary words. This database is made up of the 5,000 most common words plus a few extra, so there's a huge amount of vocabulary that you can learn here. So you need to work on the, you definitely have to have good vocabulary skills and at least an intermediate level. And that's true of any part of the exam. That's a skill that you need or abilities that you need for the entire exam. For this particular question, though, you also need to have good comprehension of both synonyms and antonyms because they're going to be asking you about specific words and phrases, and you need to be able to find that information in the reading passage in the section that they show you, usually by finding the synonyms or synonymous phrases of those words. Sometimes antonyms and antonymous phrases. That's not a very common word, so there's probably a few different ways that you could pronounce that. But basically, it's going to be with synonyms and synonymous phrases, sometimes antonyms. You also need to be able to identify keywords, both in the reading passage, in the question stem, that's the part that actually asks the question, and also in the answer choices. So those are all the skills and abilities that you need for this particular question type. There will be 3 to 6 factual information and detail questions. That's per passage. As you may have already learned, there will be at least 3 reading passages in the reading section. Sometimes there might be 4 or 5. That's with the extended version of the exam. Once again, that's kind of a surprise thing. Unfortunately, the organization that created the exam decides that they like to give the extended version just randomly to different people, and they say it's for research purposes, which I think is kind of terrible because you're already paying a whole lot of money for the exam, and then they're giving you something other than what you paid for, and they don't give you a discount. But that's not really anything that we can control, so if you get the extended version of the exam, just take a deep breath and just follow the same strategies that you would if it was, only 3 reading passages. So 3 reading passages for the normal version, 3 to 6 factual information and detail questions per reading passage. So just remember with this question type, the actual section of the reading passage where that's in question, in other words, that the one that they're asking about, that will be indicated and it will be shown again. So you basically, you don't necessarily have to read the entire reading passage before you go to the question types. That's another skill that we talk about in the TOEFL Excellence Training programs. If you're watching this video there, then you already know this. If you're watching this video somewhere else, then that is something that is in every single one of our training programs. So as far as the English level, all of the reading passages are at the same level that you would be expected to know if you're entering a university level course. As I've stated numerous times before, this exam does not test what you already know. It tests your ability to learn and to be able to function in a university. And that's why this exam is required. for so many English-speaking universities. So an example of the question type, which is a factual information or detailed question, they almost always start with something like according to the author, according to the article, according to the text, according to the paragraph, etc. And then, they'll follow up with the rest of the question. So the phrase is then followed by some subject or detail. Obviously, it's factual information. Here's an example of the factual information and detail question types. According to the author, the price of tea in China is directly related to, and then you have a few different examples here. This is just a made-up one that's not with any actual reading passage, but this is an example of how this question type will look on the exam. So then once you get this question type, and you see that it says, according to the author, and then it gives you some information that you're supposed to answer about, you know that that is a factual information and detailed question, and then you can follow the specific strategies that are necessary to answer this question type. Just briefly, that would be reading the question, the actual question, what we call the question stem, and then looking at the reading passage section that they show you and identifying where that information is, finding the answer by reading the passage and then comparing that to the answer choices, and then you find your answer. If you want to know more about the specific strategies for answering this, you can, of course, go on to the next lesson, or if you're watching this video elsewhere, like on YouTube or some other website, then you can definitely check out one of our TOEFL Excellence Training courses, and we will explain all of that to you in our lessons. So, for those of you who are in the course already, let's move on to the next lesson. For those of you who are not, please stop on over to TOEFL Excellence and take some sample lessons. See if these courses will be right for you. Until next time, have an excellent day.